I'm not a ranger yet, but I will be in the future.
Once a ranger,
Always a ranger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Once a Ranger. Today we will be talking about a press engagement and a different drum. I'm Minhas, and I'm joined with Nev, Akil, and Nick. Hi, everybody. Let's get right into it. Akil, as our resident newbie, a pressing engagement. Let's start with a pressing engagement. Tell us your thoughts.
Okay, all right. So last time you guys were saying we're starting to feel out the Power Rangers formula. I think this episode, I finally know what that formula is. I am on board. This is it's so good. It's so good. It's like introduce a problem, then Rita's like, I see that problem. I'm gonna exploit it to capture the Power Rangers and conquer Earth. It doesn't always match up, but it's fine. I love her energy.
I love that Rita is very much just like the most pettiest person ever.
Yeah.
She's like, what are they going over there? Oh, Matt, I'm gonna mess that up. I'm gonna ruin their. When Jason was like doing the reps, she basically was like, "What a loser!
What a loser! He can't do anything without his friends.
He can't do anything today."
She just
damn, he's roasted him.
He did 2,000 bench presses because he had to do it twice, and she's like, "Oh, what a loser!"
Consecutively, oh my gosh, and she's like watching him pretty intently through her telescope. She was like with Jason specifically today.
Okay, that I don't blame her for. I think we were all watching that pretty intensely.
2,000
Yeah.
reps though. That's insane.
I took a note. I was like, wait, like at first I was like, wait, did he do this? Are these like separate days that they're showing? But then she goes, he can't do anything today. I was like, he did 2,000 today in this. Like, did he take a break between these attempts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. One thing I did make a note of was Kimberly. In this episode and in the next episode, I'm going to make a note of it again. She is not a good friend in these two episodes.
No,
she is not she's not on her best behavior. Like, Jason's trying to beat this record and he's doing it. And then she comes over, she's like, what's going on? And then she's blowing her bubbles and everyone's like, hey, look at Kimberly. Kimberly, get it together. Not now.
I mean, she was supporting him though. She was cheering him on. To be fair, she's like, "You got this, Jason." You know. So
I think I agree with Minhas though. Like she just seemed kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, we're great. Like, oh yeah, 10,000, 2,000 push-ups. But then she started chewing gum randomly, and
time.
Zach, I can see like being like, really sorry, and he does make the motions to actually like be like to apologize. But Kimberly was also part of that problem. She's like, I'm just gonna blow this giant bubble right now. Like that seems so like unfair.
She didn't even apologize at all. She's not like, oh, I'm sorry, I distracted you, or put the attention on me, or any of that. She just like blew it, and then she's mad at Zach.
Yeah. I also like the short attention span of these teenagers. Like, this man is about to set a record for bench presses, and then it's like, but Kimberly's blowing up a bubblegum bubble. Like, why do we care?
I also made a note about how Trini and Billy aren't there.
Yeah.
For him to break his record. And they're like, you go later and they're just hanging out in Billy's garage.
Yeah.
I think so.
What kind like this is like, of course Jason feels like he needs to do everything on his own. You guys have not there for him when he's doing something so important.
I think that was
I feel like that's just for the plot, because if Billy was there, nobody would have lost count.
Yeah, that's true. But honestly though, this episode had like the most wildest runarounds for any forms of logic whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
Because like so the first three, the monster attacks, the Sphinx attacks.
Yes.
And what is it? Rita comes up with this idea. Oh, the Sphinx will like separate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one said anything about demorphing them either. Like so they would demorph when they disappeared. So Jason is just by himself. I don't know what's stopping anybody from just going back to Jason. Everyone's like, "Oh no, we need to go. We need a command center. We need to regroup." And then Zordon gives some weird explanation about the crystals, It was like, yeah, you need to use the crystals to get back to Jason. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, sir. Like that just they could go before. Why can't they go now? That is no. There's no plot that like kind of over that makes that all make sense.
Right.
I remember just watching. It's like they're just saying whatever to keep them away from everybody.
I took a note of that too because he sent them away. They land on like the balance beam back in the community center, and they're still in the same location. Then he gets sent somewhere else. Which I could suspend my disbelief and be like, okay, he got sent to some other area unreachable, even though it was just like a quarry or whatever. But I was like, fine, he sent him to this space that is, unreachable by Zordon. I bought that, but it was just the order was wrong. Like,
yeah,
they just were like, they're just sitting on that balance beam. Like, what do we do now? I was like, go back. That's what you do.
Yeah, go back now.
Yeah. And those power crystals, they don't do anything that they already can't do before, right? So it can help them teleport, and it can help their Megazords, but they already were doing that.
Yeah.
No.
I felt like it was. I don't know how they went around like producing these episodes, because obviously in the first episode they wanted to show like, look, this is what the show's all about: giant robots, karate, teenagers fighting these monsters, like. And I felt like if they, how like in the last episode they were like looking for their power weapons. I felt like this episode would have been like the episode to be like, look, they have giant robots too.
Right.
Like that would have been the progression of like how that plot goes. And this would have been that episode, but it doesn't work because they already did it like the first episode. Yeah. So they're like, it's not that big a deal. What are the point of the crystals? Because they never mention the crystals ever again. Like it's just
They use them though.
They use them all the time.
Yeah.
Which I feel like
they use them in the next episode too.
No, they
Sorry,
use them.
Go ahead.
We know this show is about selling toys to kids, like all kid shows from the 80s and 90s. But this episode felt like the people who are writing it were just playing with toys. Like, oh, here's a crystal. I'm going to explain to you what it does. You already know how to use it. And then it just does a bunch of other things that they didn't say it does.
Did they ever make the crystals toys? I've seen the crystals at like conventions. There's like I forget what the vendor's called, but they specifically sell like Power Ranger props, and they sell the crystal. I've seen the crystals, and I was like, man, it's like I know those exist. I don't remember them ever using it though.
Yeah, I don't know officially if there was a toy. I do remember seeing them, probably same as you, Nick, like around. They're ugly, I think. I've never seen one that. Yeah, but in the show, they're ugly too.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah.
I will say.
I think Nub has something to say. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna. So this is just a funny note. So, after tying my turban, right, I use this. It's called a salai in Punjabi. It's basically like a sewing needle, but we use it to like tuck in our hair and make sure it's all clean. I would always do the thing they do in the Zord where they're like, shoo. I do that every time after I've used this tool to fix my hair, because that's how ingrained power is. Still, to this day, by the way, I still do it. Like, it's my power crystal.
I don't know if it was like this episode or last episode, but it's when Billy jumps in the Zord. He says I'm nominal. He doesn't say more phenomenal. He just says I'm nominal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? That's not even like a Power Ranger thing. That's just not phenomenal. That's
I'm just here, guys. And speaking of Billy, on a related note, saying funny things, they're just like in their garage, as I mentioned earlier, and Kimberly's like, "Oh no, we have to help Jason." And he's just like, "Oh no."
Yeah, the delivery was not good. He was just
like, looks at her, and I'm like, Billy.
He just goes, "Oh no." That's it, Billy? Give me some emotion, damn it.
Give me something else.
It's every week for these kids. I'm sure Billy is over it.
Well, it's only like what 4 or 5 times at this point.
Yeah,
Billy is probably over it. Though.
Yeah.
One more thing I did like. I like how Bulk was the holder of the
yes.
of the record. I thought that was pretty fun. And I liked how they presented it. Like they didn't just say like, Bulk has the record. Like Bulk came in and was like, you're never gonna beat my record. I felt like that was a very smart way to like kind of show that like, okay, so he's not actually just he's not actually just an idiot. Like he can do something.
Yeah.
You know?
That just explains why he keeps challenging Jason and the other teens like every episode. It's like, oh, he actually can challenge them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like in the last episodes, you really don't see his physical abilities.
Sure.
And then there's a couple of things that they do that kind of like toe the line of fat phobia, especially with Bulk and then Ernie as well in this episode. They did that in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's nice to them to kind of swerve that trope because there really is no reason why Bulk shouldn't be able to hold that record. Because, for like a lot of bodybuilders do have like are bigger belts. So I think that's great that they just had some merit to Bulk and Skull, especially since before this moment they've just been kind of goofy.
Yeah, I don't remember Ernie being like this buffoon character that he was like kind of being in this one. Like he wasn't keeping count, and I felt like that was just kind of disingenuous. I was like, I've never known Ernie to do that. Ernie's like 110% whatever these kids are doing. So it's like kind of weird to kind of see him just sit there with like what do you have, like a burger and a soda?
Yeah.
And he's like 1008, 1009. Where are we again? Like that just seems so weird.
Yeah, and out of character. And then Kimberly again being mean. She's like, "Can you talk to me without that food in your mouth?"
Yeah.
Like she was kind of like really quippy and like. Yeah, Ernie was strange in this episode. I don't think we see him like that ever again either.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's like really appealing.
Yeah,
especially like being like just teenagers like at a rec center. Like I would never want to come back. This is awful.
I know. Yeah, I like the kind of puns and really like quippiness of the characters. You're really starting to see that now, especially in between. With that cake, it's like "Happy Birthday, Mom."
Oh yeah.
I love the little cute little like things that they go for this. And the one thing I like about Mighty Morphin, and this doesn't happen. They lose this over the seasons. They really focus on the characters as opposed to what's going on with the Zords and stuff. But because the seasons after are all streamlined and really like cut and focused, they really focus on, hey, this is the episode with this Zord, this is the episode with this weapon, this is the episode with this monster. But in this one, it's just like, what are the teens doing? And then the monsters are just kind of like bubbling around, and it's almost really fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the end with the cake where they're just kind of, or they do extend like a friendship to Bulk and Skull too, even though like they are kind of jerks. It's like they're kind of friends, but like not really. But like they're supposed to be our heroes, and like expect the best out of them. And then Bulk just falls in the cake, and it's like haha. See, this is just a funny little episode where a bunch of nonsense happens.
Yeah, actually, the final frame of that episode of A Pressing Engagement is, to me, I wrote in my notes, it encapsulates all of Power Rangers, but especially Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because it's the five of them like laughing, and then Bulk and Skull just like leaning on each other with cake on their face. And I'm just like, that's Power Rangers. Literally just like these five friends and these two, like it's so perfectly, and like the show freeze frames on it, and then the credits. So I'm like, that's Power Rangers. I was just like that. If you need to know what Power Rangers is, it's that image. It really is.
Yes, and then, I love that because then it's like the dun dun dun, dun like the iconic little ends like that. Yeah, it's great. If I can swerve and go back to the power crystals for a second, I just remembered something. Once again, what doesn't make sense is Jason's like rummaging through the rocks for these. Like, how did he know to do that? And then he picks them up, and he saw a little sparkle on the side of the mountain, and so he ran towards that, put his sword down, and started digging, I guess, where the sparkle was.
Well, it came out of his sword.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. It came out of his sword.
I must have missed that. I must have missed that.
It was very fast, to be fair.
Second.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you see something shiny in the rock and you start digging for it in the middle of the battle? That doesn't make sense, Jason. And then, but he knew that these would bring his friends to him. Like, he had this. He's like, my friends are gonna come, and then they show up and they don't say anything. And they're just kind of there. And then now we're gonna bring our Zords with these power crystals. Yeah. It was really funny. It was just kind of like this episode again. You could see even though we're starting to see the pattern, you could see them still trying to figure it out. But I think we finally have the morphing grid be officially introduced because Zordon goes tap into this. Use these crystals to tap into the morphing grid. So we know it can be tapped into. We know it can be hacked. Already, very very early on, we have the morphing grid established, and that's pretty good. Episode 5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that they brought Goldar back again for them to fight, just for him to run away again. I don't know why he's so scared of that sword. Like, every time they bring down the sword, they're like, "Yo, let's go, mano y mano," you know. But then he's like, "No, I'm out. I'm not dealing with that. I'm not doing it again."
I really, I don't know why, but I really like the King Sphinx monster. He's probably one of my favorites for some reason. I think I just like the design of it. I thought his voice was lower pitched until I watched this episode, and it's like kind of higher, which is fine, but it didn't fit the intimidation factor that I thought came with it. I think it's similar to what you were saying, Minhas, about the Bones monster. I think King Sphinx is also in one of the video games, and it's just So, and he's just memorable. Like, it's a very memorable design, and maybe it's also because it's him, and like even as brief as it is, it's him and Jason. So there's like that tied, that connection, and because I like Jason so much, so I'm focused on, and so But yeah, I just like the monster. They're like some monsters that are just whatever and kind of forgettable, like the next episode monster, but like King Sphinx and several others, they're just in my brain. I think about them.
It's good next to Goldar. When I was watching this episode, I'm like, this is a really good balance, because they have the similar kind of aesthetic going on, with the gold theme, the wings and whatnot. So it definitely worked together. But I did think about you, Nick, when Goldar dipped. And I'm like, wow, he has survival skills. And I thought about you again at the end, because Jason and Trini hold hands.
Yeah, they do. Okay, I was gonna bring that up.
Yes,
they do hold hands. They hold hands, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, he breaks the record, and then she's like, she holds his hand up first, like in victory, and then she's still just holding his hand. I was like,
There's lady hand holding. I was like, Nick was onto something. Especially since earlier, Jason and Zach are sitting together, and we have this parallel to that first episode where Trini and Kimberly are like whispering together when they're talking about Jason. Same thing happens with Zach and Jason, and they're looking at Kimberly. Like, Jason is like watching her, not in a creepy way, in a like hard eyes kind of way almost. So I was like, oh, so this is still like happening. But then Trini comes in, and that was like a lingering hand holding, and I'm like, whoa, Jason.
There's another thing in the. I guess we'll segue into the next episode, which is what was the name of the next episode?
Different drum.
Different drum. Okay, there's a scene in there, and we're gonna go back and recap the whole thing. But there's a scene in there where like he's like arm wrestling Trini, like Jason's arm wrestling Trini, and Zach is sitting right behind her, right behind her, and his arms right there, and I'm like, dang. What are these teens up to, man? Like, like in the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s are wild. Because even after, so they're really close. Something happens off camera.
Yep.
They go back, and Zach is like, they're literally like almost cuddling.
Yeah.
I noticed that too.
Trini. But now that we're talking about this episode, I'm gonna bring up Kimberly again, and she is mean. She is mean.
She's so mean.
Like, Billy is like in an accident, and she's like, "This is not how you get girls," and then leaves. Doesn't even help him. Doesn't help
ask him he's okay.
Yeah.
She is like so extraordinarily nice to the new girl.
I know. She's
so like, I can almost forgive her being mean to her friends.
I just thought it was so weird and random. Like, he literally just got embarrassed. And then she's just like, yeah, we're gonna put your dating life into question too. Like, that just seems so random to do.
And then doesn't
she's wrong about it because he ends up meeting a girl through it anyway. So
yeah,
that was cute.
And then Trini comes and like helps him up and brings him to the side. She's the best. Trini is the best. And then he says something. I thought about you, Akio, that he's bad at dancing, but he said it in a weird way.
His Billyism.
He said, yeah, in his little Billy. And then Trini's like, he says he's bad at dancing because she's the only one who understands him.
I almost had sympathy for him because I also go to dance classes to meet women and it doesn't work. But then he described dancing like that. I'm like, no, you lost it.
I'm sorry. We're just, I want to address one last thing in the last
Yeah,
episode since
go
we're
for
like
it.
talking. There was when they were getting attacked by the Sphinx. The two I forget those two names. They showed up just to watch.
Oh, Squat and Beverly.
Yes.
Yeah, they just showed up to watch, and then someone, I think Zach was like, "Where are they?" Or like,
Yeah.
"What's going on?"
He goes and punches
What's
them.
going on here? And then they're like, "We don't know." And he's like, oh, and then he just goes up and punches them. It's like, whoa, that's so intense. That's kind of mean.
I almost took a note of that because I was like, I think that's the first time they've ever been active, like, because they do this, they do show up sometimes, but they don't do anything. They don't really
They don't do anything.
So I was like, why did Zach go and strike him?
That
I mean,
was
they're
after Kimberly disappeared, so I think he was asking about that.
Yeah.
And he was like, in the moment,
Yeah.
I just lost my friend. I don't know where she is. I'm gonna punch these aliens, I guess.
What's
Right.
so
So
interesting
funny.
too about that is, I guess we can't see where everyone is. Because to me, I'm like, the Sphinx sent her away. Like, that isn't that obvious? But I guess wherever Zach
Right.
was away from where the Sphinx was. So he was just
Yeah.
like, oh, Kimberly's just not here anymore. Because it's very interesting understanding, like, everybody's placement. Because Jason was like,
Their
no, it's the
perspective.
Sphinx. And I was like, well, how did he know? But Zach didn't know. I was just...
Right.
Well, are you
That's so
gonna
funny.
ask the Sphinx? They might,
They might, yeah.
they might hurt you if you go and
They
ask them,
might.
try to ask them a question. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
can we
Just
pause,
thought that
can we
was so
pause this fight
funny.
real quick? Hey, what happened to Kimberly? No, it's not gonna work.
To bring it
So
back
you
to
go
the,
Yeah.
ask the spectators. They know.
to bring it back to the second episode,
Yeah.
like that moment just reminded me of the thing that we focused on the last thing we talked about was like never escalate a situation. And I was like, Zach definitely escalated that situation, just
Yes.
punching them in the face for no reason.
Yeah.
But also in this episode, in the second one we watched, they morph before they go into the cave. I think,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They didn't even
that's, like-
check if the girl was like hiding properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just morphed.
like
They were just-
immediately
They-
morph. Yeah.
They didn't even tell her to hide properly because the entire time Kimberly's like signing to her and like lip reading and everything.
Yeah.
And then as she's running away, Kimberly's like, "Go hide, make sure you're safe," while her back is turned.
Yeah.
they just morphed.
She's
Can't hear
and
you.
for the listeners, this character is hearing impaired. So this episode does focus on this character who is hearing impaired, and it's great for representation and whatnot. But there are some like slip ups here and there where like this character can't hear what you're saying. How are you going to communicate in this like SOS situation? What needs
Yeah.
to be done?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was a really good, like, I obviously I'm not deaf or hearing impaired or anything like that, so it's really hard to like say like what someone might think of it.
Mhm.
But I think I can appreciate it for taking that step in this show. Like this show does a lot, and, you
Mhm.
find more bits of it as you go along, of like including as many points of view as possible. And I really enjoyed just having this moment. Like, yeah, there were things that you could have like put into question, like like some people just like understood her, but then other people like didn't for the sake of plot. Like, it just seems
Yeah, like when she's like running to Jason, and Jason's like,
Yeah.
"What's happening? What's happening right now? What are you saying to me?" But it's great that Kimberly immediately knows how to sign as well. That they included that Kimberly knows how to sign, and that's, I think, Akko, you were saying, oh, she was nice to that character, and that's
Yeah,
why you
she
can
was nice
forgive her for being mean to Billy.
Billy.
And then if you notice, like literally in the next scene, she is signing when she's doing her dance class. Like you can see it subtle when she's saying left, right. She is signing how to do that,
Yeah.
which is great. And I like how they focused on this character as like her being hearing impaired was her advantage as opposed to her disadvantage. And I like that they played with that instead of making it like, oh, she would need saving or whatnot. Like she was the hero.
Mhm.
Yeah. And for people who haven't watched the episode, where are you here? But also, the weapon that Rita used was like music that put people under a spell and made them dance.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's
yes.
why, like, it like the problem that she identified was, I guess, Billy can't dance. Used music, and then the solution to that was somebody who can't hear the music. I thought that was like a really succinct way of adding that sort of character and that sort of representation in.
Again,
Yeah.
The pettiest person for Rita, just to be like, what are they doing now? They're dancing? I'm gonna kill them with music. That's what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this
So-
time.
She's so adamant about it too. Like Finster's like, I can make you a monster that breathes fire. And she's like, no, They have to sing. They have to dance. They have to make them dance. She's adamant about it.
I noted
So-
he suggested a fire-breathing hedgehog, which I'm kind of mad we never see in the series because that sounds deadly. I would love to see a fire-breathing hedgehog. So
And we know he can make it because he's like, I can make this.
Yeah.
It never
Yeah.
shows up again. That's really funny. But speaking about escalating, I guess this isn't really escalating, but when Bulk and Skull actually show up in this episode, there's a brief moment when Jason looks like he's like straight up gonna beat up Bulk.
when he kicks
Like,
the
he
chair.
was-
That was, I remember that. Yeah. Where
Yeah.
he kicks the chair from under Jason, and Jason's like gonna like.
lunges. He
Kill
like
him.
lunges at him.
Yeah.
And
Zach has
like,
to hold him back.
yeah, I was like, that's the first time I've ever seen Jason that pissed.
Yeah. I got a genuine laugh out of that whole bit by Bulk though. Like it wasn't just like a haha, this is a child. Like I laughed when he does the 1, 2, 3 and just kicks the chair out. I
Yeah,
laughed
that was,
so
yeah, that was
hard.
pretty good. All right, I lie.
This episode is like, yeah, classic Bulk is like not doofy. Like he even when he like does Zach's dance, he actually he does it like up until like the splits. That's where he kind of fumbles.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, and we've seen in the last episodes, he's not flexible. That's not his strength. But he was like on rhythm. He was like doing the moves, and I'm like, whoa, Bulk does actually know how to dance.
Yeah, I think that's what keeps them kind of relevant the whole time. You know, it's like they're not just like they're shit talkers and they're just there to like be annoying, but like Bulk can actually do something. You know, Skull's just there to just kind of like hype him up, which is nice to have a support system when you have somebody that's just trying to do as best as he can.
Yeah, but he's
Um,
not even like he's like the worst support system.
He is. He is.
But they're not
Such a
incompetent is the point, right? Is they are capable of doing things. I mean, like even in the first episode, he does a sidekick really well. Like as much as they try to the show makes it seem jokish with the music and everything, he executes a sidekick. It's just not something just anybody just does at random. So like he has some skill and abilities, but his own ego tends to put him in the situation of then having cake on his face.
Right. Funny. Well, it's like funny and sad. Like comic book trivia is Skull and Billy used to be best friends.
Oh,
like they used to be best friends as kids.
Wow.
So they would like come
That
over and
makes
like
sense.
hang out.
I can see that.
They were best friends, and then when they got to high school, Skull started hanging out with Bulk, and now there's like this like weird tension that they have, at least in the comic books. That's just
so
like
interesting.
So interesting. It is because the way you look at Bulk and Skull, and Akil, well, I want your opinion on this with fresh eyes. The way you look at Bulk and Skull is it seems like they were together since childhood. They look like they were childhood friends. And in my headcanon, I've always seen them as they've been together forever and they're going to stick it together forever. And that's just how. So it's interesting that it wasn't always like that. It's new in high school. What do you think, Akil?
Yeah, I like when I was first introduced to them, I thought they were like very surface level, like the big one and the skinny one. Like from 101 Dalmatians, you have the big one and the skinny one. Home Alone, you have the big one and the skinny one. Lion King, you have the big one and the skinny one. So I thought it was like just that trope. But as we're learning more about especially Bulk and what he can actually do and why he keeps failing when he tries these things, it's like I'm seeing like a lot of, it's probably not intended to be that deep, but like a deeper character in him. And I feel like we're not seeing enough of that with Skull. Because he is like the archetypal comic relief. I feel like we're not seeing that much. So to learn that he like has a backstory in the comic books, that's really exciting for me, and I'm probably gonna like layer that on as I continue to watch the show and be like, all right, what is Skull really doing in this situation?
I think that's why I enjoy the comics so much, is like they just continue to add layers to these characters that I already know so much. My biggest thing is like Jason is still Jason, but he's also a himbo in the comics. Like he's actually just kind of,
I love that.
he's like he's very smart, intelligent when it comes to like fighting and tactical things, but like the just incompetence of not knowing that like Trini's trying to hit on him. He's like, I'm down to lift these rocks for 10 hours straight. Like that's all he wants to do. But like it adds more layers to these characters that I really enjoy, and it's like kind of a unique experience because I'm rereading it on top of rewatching the show, and it's like, man, like this is they don't skip a beat. Like Kyle Higgins is really good at like making sure these characters still feel like they are from the TV show, even though like they're like an expansion of who they are. So highly
I
recommend.
love that.
But
Yeah, and I think like going off of that as well with this rewatch, Jason. Oh man, I had forgotten how much I love Jason. Even in this rewatch, I always know like, hey, yeah, I like Jason. But when I'm watching the show, I'm like, oh my god, I love Jason like a lot. Like he makes my heart like just thump. Just because he's so, and it's like what you said, he definitely is. He's himboy in the show as well, right? Like he has his strengths and weaknesses, but he's just so wholesome.
Mhm.
And he's just doing his own thing, and I think he really is a pillar of what is important to the team. And I think for me personally, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because we'll get there when we get there, that content when Tommy shows up, like I felt slighted. Like personally.
Sure.
I just want a little, I wonder, and I'm curious to know if I'm still going to feel that way when this time. So I'm really excited to get there. But Akil, in terms of Skull, we do get more character from Skull later as well.
Yeah,
so now we're in the beginning. We're kind of like really getting to know these characters. And speaking of getting to know these characters, like even wait, what's Babu? What's the other one's name?
Squat.
Squat and Babu, like what are they doing, right? Like in the last episode they were just watching, and in this episode they're cooking.
Yeah.
They're like, and then in like the second episode they were there to like just plant a bomb. Like they're just kind of like little henchmen that are just like doing miscellaneous tasks. And I feel like that, but I might be remembering incorrectly, that's kind of like thematically continues. They're kind of just there to like be there. And they're like continual characters, which I think is just like an interesting to note, because why were they having a party and they kidnapped these girls and made them dance? Like not even to lure the power, like they are like, oh, we're doing this to lure the Power Rangers, but you didn't need to make them dance while they were like waiting. They literally wanted to do that. They literally wanted to have these girls dance with putties and like have a party, and made them like cook for them. And that scene was so bizarre to watch because it felt genuinely so evil, right? And I'm like, oh, when it comes to like Power Ranger lore, I'm like, this is one of the most evil, like genuinely evil things, like kidnapping girls and making them dance for you.
I don't remember their backstory, but who's the one that makes the monsters?
Finster.
The
Finster?
clay. Finster?
Finster-
Finster's backstory is
Finster's
really
wild.
sad. Finster's
Is it?
backstory is insane. Like he had a wife and a family, and then they died, and then he tried to remake them as clay people, and never worked. Continued to never work. So it's kind of like Frankenstein essentially, but like they're really dark. These people, these monsters are really dark.
That in the Sentai or American?
American. This is
Oh my god, that's
this is
official
Boom-
American canon?
Yeah, Boom Comics canon. So it happens. I'm telling you, they messed it. They messed with the formula a lot. So I don't remember what their backstory is, or if they even have one. But it's like
No,
if,
in the show
if
there's
Rita's running
nothing.
with like a similar crowd, they're probably all kind of messed up in some kind of way.
Yeah. In the
I
show,
was
there's
no,
about
nothing.
to
We
say
don't-
something so nice about Squat and Babu. Go ahead. No.
No, say it. Say what's
Yeah.
nice.
I feel like their energy is the energy I want to bring to my job too. Like, okay, we're gonna capture the Power Rangers, we're gonna dance. Seems like a party, let's cook some food, right? Oh, these giant monsters are gonna come down and defeat the Power Rangers. What am I gonna do? Stay up in space with Rita and watch? No, grab some popcorn and have a seat. Right? They're making the most out of the situation that they're in. I love that.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
All right, now what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say I don't. First of all, I don't think they give any backstory to these characters in the show, but I think my biggest thing was, at least early on, Rita has decent plans. I mean, we always joke around that she does, like later on, I feel like she just gets tired and frustrated, so she's just like, send a monster down. But like, look, in like that one episode, she tried to trap them in a time warp. All the plans are a little wonky, but still, like, there's like this idea of like things she can do. Trap him in a time warp. Oh, she sees Jason as like kind of this leader, or that he needs his friends, so what is the best thing to do? Separate him from his
Separate
friends.
them, yes.
In the other episode, she had those like multiple attacks going on, right? When Kim and Trini went to that dump site, so they got attacked there, and then she sent a monster. And then this one, okay, lure the Power Rangers in by kidnapping these people that they know. And it's like, there are these like glimmers of brilliance in terms of her attempts at taking down the Power Rangers that I feel like we lose later on, generally speaking, just because it's like again, I think she just gets tired. I think she's just like, just try this monster that does this thing. You know, like
Right.
later on, it's just like, oh, this monster can like teleport things. So get. It's just like there's no real, there's no. I feel like there's not enough passion behind it later on. Whereas early on, I'm seeing in this rewatch like, oh, these plans are not bad.
Right.
Does she ever like shift her focus away from like attacking the Power Rangers? Because like I understand that she hates the Power Rangers and she's like, I have to get rid of them. But like if her point is like if her goal is to conquer Earth, why isn't she just making plans to like conquer Earth? You know what I mean? Like all her plans are centered around destroy the Power Rangers. Like that's not destroying the Power Rangers does not conquer Earth. Does that make sense?
Well, that's what she says. Like in the beginning of each episode, she needs to destroy the Power Rangers so that she can conquer Earth. I think she's assuming if she tries to conquer Earth, the Power Rangers will stop her. So she needs to focus on that problem first. And then, I'm really sad that Nuv said that the plans kind of get tired.
To my recollection, I could be wrong.
There's some that are pretty good though.
Really intentional.
Yeah.
She is like studying these people, finding their weakness, and then they can only be exploited. Like it's not that they're defeating these monsters regularly. The plans are only overthrown because they found a way around their weakness and grown as a team, grown as a person, right? So it's like so good for if you're doing Monster a week, if you're doing Conflict a week. This is such a good formula. I hope it doesn't go away. Which
is really highlighted in a future episode. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but like it's one of my favorite episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's a two-parter actually, and it highlights the growth of the Power Ranger of each person. I really like that episode. It's really fun. But that one's also a really good plan actually. And again, I could be wrong. We'll be finding out because I just feel like it got more formulaic as it went. But maybe every week she is doing something similar like this.
I don't mind. I like that.
Yeah.
I sometimes living in a world where like every villain is like relatable. Every villain is like an anti-hero or whatever. Yeah. I want my like just Saturday morning cartoon villain that's like, they're dancing this week. I'm gonna fuck up with them up with some music.
Yeah, but I will say, one plot. This is from the Sentai, but I just have to share it because it will forever stick with me. I've only seen a handful of episodes from the Sentai, but Bandora, who's Rita's Japanese counterpart character, she sees this forest being chopped down, so her plan is to trap kids within the trees that are going to be chopped down.
Oh my god! It's wild.
Evil. I feel like Sentai Rita is like so evil.
She is.
I'm like you, Nev, where I haven't really seen too many things. But Nick, talking about like tragic backstories, Sentai Rita like has a tragic backstory, very similar to what you were saying about Babu. Like her husband died or something like that, and she kind of goes insane. But I don't really like comparing the two because like the American one is the American one. Like it has its own.
They're so radically different.
Yeah.
I think this is why like being in the Power Rangers Sentai fandom for like such a long time. Like I think I did ask that question at some point of like, why isn't it just like all considered one thing? It's like because they're completely different things.
Yeah.
Especially when it made that transition. Like Japan has obviously they came up with the whole Sentai like Ranger costume idea, but like America really just takes it and like makes it its own. Like Saban like reinvented it created the morphing grid, which is now like this huge thing in current Power Ranger lore. I thought it was just a bunch of word salad, but now it's like, it's a real thing now. There's no Power Rangers without the morphing grid, and I just can't imagine a world without anything being related to the morphing grid. It's just it's so wild to me.
Yeah, it is. It definitely has developed to its own lore, and I think this episode really was the first time that you really see the kind of splicing. I mean, you can tell it's splicing, but in this one, because it's so nonsensical, what's happening, this plan is kind of like all over the place. You can see the writers thinking. Like it's like the first time you actually can see, how do we make this? What do we write in this voiceover to make the scenes make sense and come together? And I feel like you can tell that these are separate episodes, like pushed together instead of they take it directly from one Sentai episode. I think that's why the American ones are their own thing, because they're not taken from one Sentai episode. They're taken from multiple put together to make scenes. And I think, Nick, you mentioned later in an earlier episode of our podcast where they reused the Goldar scene over and over again.
Yes,
And I think so. That's it. Yeah,
yeah.
That really holds.
Here.
That really holds true to that. It's like they're splicing a bunch of episodes together, so it can't be a one-on-one.
Also, the footage they use of Rita from the Japanese Sentai footage, her facial expressions are just on point. Like every time they get a close up on her, like she's always looking through the looking glass, like, huh? Like just always looking at them. She's really into it. I'm like, yeah, I want to know what's going on over there.
I love that. I love how expressive she is. I mean, you can tell she really has a headache when she says, like, I have a headache. Sorry, if you don't mind, to continue that thought about it's clearly not a one-on-one and it's spliced together weird. This episode, this guy is a Piper, right? But then when he's doing his little thing with the Megazord, suddenly these buildings are coming up. And they don't explain why that's happening. Like it's just like why are these?
I was like, he also turns into a boulder. Like it switches from him to a boulder. Like that he's trying to. It was just like it was very disorienting, which is I think what they were showing, but it had nothing to do with his previously established power.
Also, it does not sound like an accordion. I was like so bothered by that. I was like, you have some of the best sound direction happening in the show, and you're telling me there was no accordion sound in any. That just seems ridiculous. I mean, I'm just nitpicking, but that's just funny.
Yeah.
I really thought, I was like, oh, he has an accordion. He's gonna hear an accordion. Never happened. And I was like, okay, all right then.
Speaking of ridiculousness, when the main character goes back to find help, one, she didn't call the cops, but two, she goes straight to Jason, who is working out at the food counter. Like, eat a sandwich, dude. Yeah. Jason, you just did 1,000 push-ups in the last episode, 2,000 in a day, 3,000 by the end of it.
3,000.
Yeah.
You don't have to work out at the food counter. Like, you can take a break.
He's got to keep his muscles warm. He's got to break the record.
Going.
Yeah.
Got to make sure he's ready to fight.
Yeah, I mean, what else is he gonna do? You know,
Yeah.
He practically works there at the. Well, he does work there. He volunteers.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
Do they all work there? No, I don't think so. Right? I think it's
There's
just
something going on there.
Teaching classes.
Yeah.
Like today, like not today. In this episode's Kimberly was teaching the class.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there was like another comic book trivia. They do actually state like, oh, we are going to be helping at the community center. Jason says, you guys all work here now. That's basically it. And they didn't ask anybody. Ernie was going out of business or something because like all of the Power Ranger attacks were leading people to like not leave their homes and like leave town. And he's like, I don't have any help. Like no one can help me. And he's like, oh, I have an idea. And then Jason's just like, yeah, we all work here now. So I guess that kind of makes sense that like they're doing classes. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen Billy do a class. I feel like that's what does Billy do?
He does in the school. He teaches some science stuff. Yeah, tutoring and stuff.
He's a tutor. He's supposedly.
Yeah, Rocky also does science stuff. Which is like,
let's talk about Billy really quick and that ending. Like that guy. That guy's either a genius or he's evil because like there's no way he didn't know how to dance. The whole episode, I don't know how to dance, guys. I'm sorry. Like, appendages, not.
Yeah.
And then he just guts up, and was that actually him? That you think he actually?
Probably because it's fuzzy. Like the quality of the show is very poor. I mean, it's from the 90s. You can't tell. Like I can't see in his face if it's somebody different. What about you guys?
It's got to be him, right? He's a martial artist. He can dance. He was faking it. Like the actor was faking it before, for sure.
Yeah.
But like, I don't doubt that it was him dancing.
I think.
And that's why Kimberly's like she works miracles, because like him trying to impress the girl has made him able to dance.
I feel like that takes away from like from Billy's achievement. This guy literally did a handstand into like I don't know any of these dance moves, but he like does a whole spin. He does the cartoon thing. I've never seen. I don't remember anyone ever doing that. It is like perfectly. I'm like, man, what a guy.
Kimberly uses this term. She goes, I always thought she was happening. And I'm like, I remember as a kid, or even when I rewatched it in my teens, I didn't realize how much 90s slang they actually use. I thought it was I actually had to rewind it because I'm like, what did she say? She thought she was what? And then she was like, happening. And I'm like, oh. And I was trying to remember if like later seasons do that because I feel like they don't. I feel like this one really is 90s teens slang, right? It's
Even,
like literally 90s teens, yeah.
Even in episode 4, when Zach apologizes, she goes, "It's casual." I was like, "Who says it's casual?" Like, what? Maybe people said that back in the 90s. I don't know. I was just like, that's an interesting phrase.
That also just feels like she's saying, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't know. It feels very much like I'm not going to accept your apology, even though we ruined Jason's moment. Like,
Kimberly's the worst friend.
Okay, I know Nav will agree with me. I don't know. Well, actually, I don't know if you'll agree with me. On the 2017 Power Rangers movie, I think Kimberly's the worst one out of all of them. They're like, she's the worst one.
Worst
out of
in
all,
what way? I mean, like...
Well, just to like to condense.
She cyberbullies, right?
Yeah, she cyberbullies somebody by sending somebody's like inappropriate pictures around the school, and then we're supposed to just feel bad for her. I was like, no, you're a terrible. Of course, I don't want to be friends with you. I wouldn't want to be friends with you either.
That's true.
Straight up sucks.
But I do like Jason's approach in that movie too, where he's just like, "You did a bad thing. That happens. Life sucks. Like, just you got to move forward." Like, he wasn't he wasn't showing the compassion. You know, like, no, it's okay, no big deal. Like, he didn't do that, right? He was just like, you did a bad thing, but now you got to deal with it. Like, freaking. But that's
on Jason's character.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
It's like, no, I wouldn't be your friend either. I would stop talking to you immediately.
Yeah. But that's the point.
Until we get. I cannot wait till we get more of Zach's character development because so far what we're seeing, so in the previous episode, he's very archetypal, right? So he's the dancer. Alpha wants him for like hip hop dancing. In this episode, when they're talking about sign language, he goes, "It's like rapping."
Yeah.
Power Rangers, come on. Yeah, I just need a little bit more from you here. So I think we will get that in the future, but right now it's very lackluster, I think.
It also feels like he's always dancing. Like, it feels like he's
Which
always...
is fine.
I mean, is it though? Like, Jason isn't always doing karate kicks, right? Like,
well,
Billy...
He was just working out.
Okay, fair enough. Trini's the only one who doesn't just do what she is supposed to do 24/7.
Yeah.
Because they'll show Kim like doing stuff on the balance beam and Billy being all nerdy and Zach dancing. Because it was something I noted. Like also that episode ending is kind of weird with 5 because it's like the 4 of them and then that other girl who gets no name and she's just like at the table with them. I just found it so weird. I was just like, why is this girl there? Like, I know why she's there because it was part of the plot, but like they're watching Billy and I'm just like, but Billy should be in the circle. Like, it was weird that it was this random girl and not Billy, because that's like usually all episodes end kind of that way with like the 5 of them just like there. Instead, it was this random girl with no name who we'll never see again. And it's just very.
Oh no, we don't see her again.
No,
sorry.
Very little characters are reoccurring.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Richie, but we don't talk about Richie.
Yeah, he comes back next episode. Looking forward to that.
Also, speaking of Billy, though, I don't know what remote-controlled cart he was on, but that thing shouldn't have gone out and then come back and gone around and like turned a bunch. I was like, who's controlling this? This doesn't make sense.
In my headcanon, someone was mean and pushed him.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll take that.
Did he? I thought he like got pushed into like the girls' locker room or something.
Something like that. No? He went into some closet or some room with clothes because he had clothes when he came back. But the inertia of this cart should not have lasted for as long as it did. Like, it swerved a bunch, and everybody's like, again, like with the rocket, everybody's just like, oh no!
Did any of these actors get injured while doing being on this show?
Oh, I think so, probably.
Because like they did all their own stunts, right? Like because that was part of the thing, and they would have to like act and then do their own stunts, which seems insane to me. You know, because that would never fly today. That doesn't happen today. Talent doesn't do like all of that.
this isn't. I don't know about the show, but I remember I was literally just watching some like panel, and they were talking about the movie, the 95, right? The Power Rangers the movie.
Yes.
And while they were like on a break or something, I think it was Johnny Young Bosch and Jason David Frank were like running up this tree and like doing backflips.
God.
And then like JDF was like, oh, I bet I can run up like the whole thing or something. And Johnny Young Bosch was like, nah, it's good. But he does it, and then he like falls and like scars his face. So in the scene where they're rollerblading, he's in the back because I don't even think it's him.
my God.
Oh, interesting.
There's a lot of crazy stories, and I know we're getting slightly off topic here, but there's one where JDF like is driving a car and he had someone on the roof of the car, and they're reckless. They were reckless back then. JDF was notorious for really pulling pranks. I'm going to say nicely on the other cast members.
Yeah, it's wild looking at the show and seeing what they can get away with, and I'm like, man, that's liability. Someone's getting sued if someone does that. Like the way like that, but that's what makes it kind of feel a little real and authentic. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like thinking of like the Bulk and like when Bulk kicks the chair from underneath Jason. Like if that guy face planted, the show's over, right? But like
Yeah.
he's able to catch himself and do it and like carry the scene on like it's normal. It's like this would never happen today. Like I can't watch a movie and it would be like all CGI. And I'm not saying like, oh, this is much better. Like, no, obviously I want people to be safe. But I'm just saying like when you are like watching something that feels like it was in the early days of television and movies, like you can kind of appreciate that's like old kung fu films, you know, where like, they do their own stunts and you see them do this long shot of action. You're like, okay, well, it feels real because I can see it, you know?
Yeah, especially
I just feel like that's...
Especially because it feels like they do take a lot of their own tumbles, right? Like, because that's
Yeah.
usually the biggest thing that stunt people are involved in is like when you have to fall and stuff, and then it cuts to like a close up of them like landing, right? So you can see their face. But like they just do it like in that scene with the rope in like episode 2 or whatever, and Jason just rolls and falls in front of Trini. Like that's an accident waiting to happen. Like, but like it was clearly Austin St. John. Like you see his face, and like he could have hit the weights or something. Like it wasn't like it was a secure situation there. In terms of like, so it is. There's a level of appreciation you can get for that element of just the fact that they were doing it. And part of one of the interviews I was watching, like this was for the. Well, I don't want to spoil anything for a kill, but like future Rangers. Part of the casting was that you need to either be a dancer, martial artist, or gymnast, or something like that. Because like
but even the original ones had to be martial, which obviously you could tell. But the thing, and I'm going to go off what you were saying, Nev. The thing with that is those guys were so. At least they had that going for them. Bulk and Skull were not. And I don't want to like talk too much about what happened in later episodes, but there is a scene where Skull is on a horse and he gets chucked off the horse. You can't really see it because it's in the distance, but that actually is the actor getting chucked off the horse. Wow. He talks about it in interviews. And even the martial artists that where that scene with the rollerblades that you were talking about, they didn't know how to do that before. They learned that day, and they're doing crazy stunts with those rollerblades as well, like rolling downhill and whatnot. So it's just like whoa, there are a lot of expectations.
The Wild West.
I wonder if that was them skydiving. That would be insane.
Dude, I'm not buying that one.
Rollerblading, skydiving.
Skydiving, snowboarding, whatever weird... Who does that? Who does a snowboard as part of this?
On that wild note, I think it's time we wrap it up.
Okay.
This has been episode 3 of Once a Ranger. I'm Minhas. And you are joined by Nick, Akil, and Nub, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Woo!
Once a Ranger,
Always a Ranger.